Hey guys, welcome to the Familypreneurs podcast. My name is Daniel and my host is Alex Lau. Today we're going into the topic about family teams. Why is it important and what does it look like? And how can family teams work together so that families are on the same page to build their business? It's a great topic. Looking forward to having a chat.
Okay, so Daniel, this is the second episode of the Familypreneur podcast. How are you feeling about our last episode?
Yeah, good. It's always good to start something, hey, and
Mm,
you learn and you grow and you think about how you could have articulated things better, but I
yeah.
think it's all part of the process, all the part of the journey. So
All right.
it's been good.
Yep, the beauty's in the journey. Look, obviously we spent a lot of time in the last episode unpacking your story. You talked about a little bit of your childhood, your career, where you've landed so far. One particular concept that you mentioned, well, two that really stood out to me was the concept of the family first entrepreneurship. We sort of touched on it, and I happen to do a little bit of a research, just looking around online, trying to find either some of other people's content around this concept of family first entrepreneurship. I found a little bit, which were interesting, and I'll share it with you offline. And then the second concept that you sort of introduce is this concept of build your family in a way as if it is a team, and a team to me, like I watch and play sports a lot, so immediately that comes to mind. I'm keen to talk about the concept of family as a team, but before that, I would just love to round up your story so far because last week you talked a lot about your childhood and your career and how you have built your professional skills and where you sort of had landed. I'm curious to know because you're still relatively new to full-time business owner mode, right? Even though you've been swimming around a lot of businesses and entrepreneurship and being a part of that growth for so many other people and other businesses. But for you as a business, doing it full time, you're relatively new to the game. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting one. So I, for a number of years, did what I call the bivocational ministry business life, which
Mm,
very much was I was heavily involved in churches, working as executive pastor, and also supporting from a finance perspective with churches. And then while I was doing that, I had a quote unquote side hustle, which was basically a virtual CFO for businesses and organizations. So
mm,
you're kind of correct in that, like, I've been doing that for about 8, 9 years now. So I've been doing
yeah.
that for quite a long time. But it was very much like at that point in time, it was very much a calling into ministry. And then my business
Mm,
side was kind of what I did on the side.
mm,
About 2.5 years ago now, I started to feel that I wanted to have a bit more of an impact and an influence in the business world and really pursue that. And I had a number of clients that were starting to build up, and it was kind of difficult to be doing both at that point in time because of the culture that I was a part of. So
yeah.
I felt like I needed to make a call. And so I made that decision to go all into business and amazingly just picked up a whole bunch of clients really quickly, and then have just been
Mm,
full time in that ever since for like the last 2.5 years. So side
yeah.
hustle for like maybe 5 years, and then
Mm.
full time for the last 2.5.
Yeah, so when you and I would consider you because I've known you for a very long time, and I would probably consider you as an employee, more like an in-house entrepreneur. And for a lot of businesses, that's probably one of the greatest assets that you can have is someone in-house who has the professional skills in managing finance and management and all of that stuff, but always has a growth mindset and always thinking or thinking like an entrepreneur. So where are the opportunities? How do we go about, how do we find growth and all of that stuff? So, like it's the sort of dream employee, right? But and then 2.5 years ago, decided you wanted to transition fully into now the virtual CFO consulting practice. Did anything surprise you going from side hustle to full time? or was that, you were sort of expecting all the things that have happened to your business so far?
Yes, I think the biggest thing, going back to what you just said before about being a entrepreneurship, entrepreneur, or like the idea of
Yeah.
being more entrepreneurial within an existing structure. So that's probably how I saw myself for a very long time. When I first went into my career in the early days working for tech companies, I definitely saw myself as that. I saw myself as not an entrepreneur, not someone who is the business owner. I saw myself as the guy that can be the second guy, the guy that can support an entrepreneur. And that was always my belief that I wasn't an entrepreneur. They are the entrepreneurs and I'm here to serve them.
Mm,
And through my journey through that season, I started to realize like actually like I can do this. This isn't a big step for me to step into doing my own thing. So when I
mm,
stepped out of let me rephrase it. When I stepped into full time business, and what it sounds terrible, but I was surprised that I actually knew what I was doing.
yeah.
And because at the end of the day, business is about serving people. If
Yeah.
you serve people well and solve their problems, you're going to
Mm,
get exposed to more opportunities, more problems to solve.
mm,
And that was kind of my experience. Was I don't know, I was always a little bit worried that maybe I wasn't the entrepreneur. That kind of insecurity, that type of thing. But then when I
mm,
got out there and just started solving problems and serving entrepreneurs and looking at ways to fix things, I was like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at this. I'm actually pretty good at fixing cash flow. I'm actually pretty good at, helping, bring strategy and priorities
mm,
and focus for growth and all of these types of things. And so it was kind of more like in some ways in the back of my mind was like, can I make this work? And then I was like, oh,
mm,
I can make this work. So it was probably more an internal confidence revelation more than anything when I made
mm,
that shift.
mm. Well, big on that, I've actually got two more questions for you, like of this whole transition, right? Because you had been a 2IC essentially for sometimes ambitious business owners, sometimes
Mm.
already successful business owners. And obviously, a lot of the people who would listen to us are business owners. And as a 2IC, who are sort of toggling between the practical side of business and the growth and vision and opportunity side of business, what would be some of the red flags that you've identified along the way? Uh, from your classic entrepreneurs who are founders and creating all these products themselves and have to go out there and close all these sales themselves. Like, yeah, what would be some of the red flags that you've identified?
Specifically for those founders
Yeah,
and
for
what
those found, yeah, that's right. So as an observer, because you've been in
Mhm.
that role for many years,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that you go, okay, this is I get the vision, but I don't think it's gonna work. Or what are some of the behaviors you go like, you keep doing that, you're probably gonna fail.
Yeah. So entrepreneurs are usually opportunity driven. So
Mm,
they've seeing lots of opportunities. The biggest problem for most entrepreneurs is that they see an opportunity, they pursue the opportunity, but they need to hand on that opportunity to a team or to a system.
mm.
And that handover is usually the part where a lot of entrepreneurs really struggle with, especially if they don't have someone on their team that can
Story of
take
my
on
life.
that system and that process. And that's the biggest issue is so it's kind of like, well, what do these entrepreneurs do when they don't have a team and they don't have the systems to maintain and continue these opportunities?
Mm,
What do they do? How do they do
yeah,
that? So that's kind of
that's right.
why, and that's really where I've found my niche, however you
Mm,
want to pronounce it, is recognizing that there's a gap in a business's growth where they're too big to be just reliant on the owner, but they're too small to hire a full executive team and a management team that can really
mm,
support that transition. And so that's kind of where I've come in and provided that kind of fractional support for many of
mm,
those entrepreneurs. But
yeah,
that seems to be the breakdown. It's like the opportunities there,
mm,
and there's the future growth opportunity there as well,
yeah,
but
yeah,
translating the opportunity to a system and a team so that it's no longer reliant on the owner, that's the
absolutely.
biggest breakdown.
Yeah, and that is basically, yeah, the classic lid of scalability, right? Someone has an idea, finger in the sky, or had a revelation from God, or they receive a phone call of a potential big whatever contract opportunity, and then they go back and tell the rest of the team, we're going north, right? And then, so drop everything that you're doing. We're going north, okay? And I'm going to
Yeah.
lead the charge for 3 to 6 months. We're now going north. We're gaining traction. Now, the business owner, for whatever reason, go, all right, now we're going north. I'm pretty sure you guys understand how to go north. Now you go north. I'm going south because there's another shiny object that we're chasing,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, and then yeah, that's where everything falls apart. Yeah, interesting. My second question on that journey is, now that you've been doing this 2.5 years full time, where you are taking ownership and responsibility on absolutely everything of your business. Obviously, you're really good at managing the financial side of things, the management side of things, and the delivery side of things, and the system side of things. But when it comes to, finding clients, closing sales, building relationships, and toggling through the soft skill of building has anything again surprised you, things that you felt, yeah, because now you're running a whole show by yourself, and if you don't, you can deliver very, very well, but if you don't have clients, or if
Mm.
you can't sell and whatnot, that's not going to be a good look for you. Yeah, what does that journey look like for you now, where you're taking 100% responsibility of the whole ship?
Yeah, I think the last few years has definitely been a lot of learning
Mm,
and a lot of learning from and we all have to go through this, right? I think two specific things is having to get clear on my messaging and explaining to people what I do.
mm,
What I do is actually quite unique. I mean, there's lots of virtual CFOs out there. There's lots of, virtual or fractional COOs and different things like that. The way I approach it is quite different to them. It's
mm,
very systematic and it's quite a different approach. So trying to explain that difference can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. So having to learn how to communicate and craft my messaging in a way that's really clear, which is obviously conversations we've had a million
mm.
conversations about, and always
Of
as we're
course.
adjusting and learning as we go.
Yeah.
And that's what we all have to go through, right? Especially in those early days of business.
Yeah.
That's been really crucial.
Yeah.
The second thing I've had to learn is around distractions,
Mm,
and again, we're all going through the same thing, and I'm not
that's right.
immune to it. Is you
Mm,
see a new opportunity and you think, oh, that's going to be the next stage of opportunity on growth, and it actually
mm,
is just a really bad distraction,
mm,
and you learn from it. Like it's not
that's
like
right.
it was a terrible thing to do, but you
Mm,
learn from it, and but you recognize as you go through, if I hadn't have chased that shiny ball and had have
mm,
just focused on what I was supposed to be doing and what I'm continuing to do now,
mm,
where would my business be? I
mm.
probably would be a little bit further along than I am
Yeah.
now because I didn't get distracted, right? So I think
Mm,
those two things is about clarity and not just so clarity and focus are probably the two
yeah.
things that I've learned over the last two years. That hey, I need to. Those are the two things I really need to go deep on.
Hey, let's unpack this a little bit, right? Because I'm the victim of the distraction devil as well. What do you think? And again, I don't have this straight. And I'm still forming some ideas in my mind as we're talking about this. But I do feel that over my business journey, look, I my story is slightly different. I come from a multi-generational business family, so businesses has been all I know throughout my childhood and early adulthood and everything. I started my first business when I was 18, but I feel like my business growth has been slowed. Uh, um, when business growth have been slow is because of me chasing after distractions. I I would I would love to have this conversation. What would be some of the symptoms that you think to help the audience, to help our audience, right? Because we're on this journey together, and a lot of people who listen to us would be business owners, entrepreneurs, and whatnot. And we're up against 50,000 priorities at the same time, right? How do we know what is the one thing that we should be working on? Uh, and it's actually easy to work on that one priority when you know that is the absolute priority, right?
Mhm.
But how do we go about discerning what's not important, even though they are shiny, but they're actually distractions for you? Yeah, what's your take on it?
It's really hard.
It is.
Yeah, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's really hard because a lot of the times the shiny objects look like they will
Yeah,
help
you're
us.
only one step away, right?
Yeah,
If
it's like,
if
oh,
I
if
had
we,
I'm
it,
only one Zoom call away. I just need to get through this one thing and then I'm gonna tip, and then yeah. Next thing you know,
yeah,
you're doing another 25 Zoom calls and get nowhere, right?
that's
Yeah.
right, that's right.
Yeah.
So the issue is often not that there's a shiny ball, it's that there's too many shiny balls.
Yeah.
So what I find is that in business, we sh something's working. If we're in business, something's working, right?
Mm,
And so the focus should be how do we maximize and optimize what's working and then add to it,
mm,
but in a clear, focused, strategic way. Often what happens is that we add to it, we do it for 3 months, and then we go add something else another 3 months later, and then we go add something else 3 months later. So now we've got four things that are less than a year old that we're trying to implement all at the same time, and none of them
mm,
have been implemented very well. I
mm,
think if we optimize what we were doing and we were really clear on the key product, the key funnel, the key delivery
mm,
strategy. If we were really clear on all of those things and optimize them and go, okay, how can we add the next step and just did one thing for a year, we
mm,
would be a lot further along than trying to do four different things at the same time during that year. And I think that's where priorities start to drift. And in our team, we've got four different staff working on four different projects because we think
mm,
that's going to be the thing that really helps us. So
mm,
I think that often it's not so much that there's a shiny ball, it's that there's too many shining balls and
mm,
we're moving through them too fast. So
mm.
we don't stick to one long enough to really
Yeah,
see,
that's
things. So like marketing's is a
tough.
obvious one is that there's always a new marketing strategy,
Mm,
right? There's always, and that's what I find even with some of my clients. There's usually one marketing strategy that's doing really, really well,
mm.
and my attitude is drop everything else, just focus on that one because that's already bringing in the leads. Let's just really, really optimize and focus on that one. But sometimes it can be so tempting to try and work on everything else at the same time, and
Yeah,
that's
or yes, and I'm thinking about some of the clients that I deal with. So obviously I'm in the marketing world and business development, product development, market validation, all of that stuff. Like I've actually had two conversations about distractions with my clients this week. And my take on this is that a distraction, or if I'm using Christianese, the temptation to keep working on things that don't work comes from someone had some early success based on a experiment,
hmm
right? Let's say you launch some campaign or you created this product and then you had one client who loved it, right?
hmm
And then your bias is towards, wow, I've got one client who paid me big dollars and he or she absolutely loved it and we smashed it out of the park, right? So and we just need more. We just need more of these clients, right?
hmm
And then sometimes that's why it's hard, right? Totally agree with you. But sometimes when you look back, be like, oh, that particular client or that particular campaign was actually a unicorn, right?
mm,
And this thing that I'm creating is actually not repeatable, or it cannot be delivered without me.
yeah.
Yeah. But they go too obsessed with it because they have one early success based on one experimentation. They became too obsessed and they keep believing in it, keep believing in it, keep believing in it, keep
Mm,
working on it to a point that, they're starting to create different versions, different Frankensteins and whatnot, but it's not repeatable and cannot be delivered outside of them, right?
yeah.
That 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 to me, like, those two particular cases that I've had this week tend to be similar to what I'm describing.
Yeah.
And this is quite intuitive, right? You're speaking to someone over a coffee table, you'd be like, man, I don't think you're chasing the right thing.
Mhm.
And I want to talk you out of it and go and focus on something else, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're saying the same thing with slightly different perspectives because
Mm,
for me, I'm saying like something's working, right? And what
yeah.
you're describing is something that isn't working, right? And so
Something worked one
it
time.
worked, but it's no
Yeah,
longer working, right? And
yeah,
so
exactly.
and
That's
and
right.
so that's what I'm probably saying the same thing is
Yeah.
that what's working,
Mm,
today, not what
mm,
worked in the past, what's
yeah,
working today. And if we
yeah,
just do that, if we just do more of it, if we just do
yeah,
better at that, how
yeah.
much
So
can we grow from that?
yeah, I know that we're digressing a little bit, and we will go back to the main topic. Just this one thing, right? Okay, so this particular client. So we were talking about SEO, right? And
Mhm.
SEO is my worst favorite. This is my least favorite topic, right? But again, most people come to me and say, "Oh, I want SEO help." Okay, anyway, um, so he was like, "Okay, so we hire all these people before, and we were killing it with SEO, and then we made some decisions and changed our websites. Now that SEO is tanking." Right? And for about 6 months, he was like so obsessed. How do we go back to the glory days? Should we do this, do that, change agency, change websites, yada yada yada. Right? I'm like, and then that's the exact conversation that we always have with people, right?
Mhm.
SEO is only a tactic in the
Yeah.
whole marketing world, right? And is clearly not working right now. And for
Hmm.
you to fix that, you need to deploy a lot of capital, another 6 to 9 months for organic growth. And now with the whole AI disruption, AI, SEO is a totally different game, right? So is this
Yeah.
worth you going down that rabbit hole for another 6, 9 months and spending tens of thousands of dollars? Or there are a trillion other tactics and strategies that you can deploy outside of SEO, right? So
Mm.
that is a symptom of, hey, you're obsessing too much into a particular rabbit hole and it's becoming a distraction and it's actually stopping you from growing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think like you have to be aware of all those things, right? Like SEO
Mm.
is it to me it seems like is shifting more towards AIO,
Yeah, exactly. AEO,
which
yeah.
is AI optimization. So I think you got to be aware of the shifts and the changes that are happening in the industry, and
Yeah.
and and you need to pivot on that. But yeah, if something's not working, yeah,
Mm,
I think there's a time to go, okay, we're going to put a time limit on this. We're going to
mm,
do this for X amount of months. And if it's still not working, we're going to pivot. We're
mm,
going to make a shift. I
mm,
think that you're right, though, is that if you're holding on to the way things have been done
yeah.
for forever and
Mm,
assuming that things will always continue to be done that way in the future,
mm, mm.
you're making a pretty risky bet
That's right.
on that. And it's why I say it is important to have shiny balls. The issue is not the shiny ball. The issue is how many shiny balls are you trying to do at the same time?
Mm,
And I
that's
think
right.
that's where I would say is, hey, you should be trying different marketing tactics, but like, let's not try and do 10 of them at once.
Yeah,
let's
that's
do,
right.
let's do one, max two, or one that has a few different elements to it that we're kind of
Mm,
testing a few different things at the one, but the strategy is always still the same. And
that's right.
so I think I reckon it's just more about focus on adding new tactics rather than just holding on to the existing tactics and not trying anything.
Absolutely. Okay, so that we can keep the main thing. On to the next topic. Family as a team.
Yeah.
You introduced that concept last episode. I would love to hear more about that, basically.
Mm. This is probably the one thing that changed my whole marriage. Like
Mm,
it was such a big revelation, not just for
wow.
me, but for my wife. It shifted everything for our family. So when I say understanding family as a team is a big deal, like it's a big deal,
Mm,
especially for us. And the reason for that is in the early days of our marriage, Maddie and I, because I was traveling a lot for work, I'm a very purpose, mission driven type person.
mm,
So I tend to be working on lots of projects, lots of opportunities, business, ministry, all sorts of stuff. And
mm,
I think my wife often felt like that was Daniel's world. Those
mm,
are the things that Daniel is pursuing, and then I'm kind of doing my own thing over here. And because Maddie was a bit younger than me, she was also trying to figure out for herself what she wanted, what
yeah,
her passions were, what her purpose was, and so together we were kind of operating side by side, but doing different things. We weren't a team at that point
right.
in time, and it
Yeah,
caused
yeah.
a lot of disruption, or
Friction.
it was we
Friction.
weren't aligned.
Yeah,
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 friction. Yeah, a lot of
yeah.
friction. We weren't aligned, We were doing different things, and Maddie especially felt like I was pursuing what I wanted to do, and she didn't know how she fit into my
Mm,
world because
mm,
she was wanting to do these other things as well.
mm.
And so for a long time, we were kind of doing different things,
All right,
and it
just
wasn't
pause there.
un
What was, sorry, just I would love to, because again, is these intricacies of family life that, that is really valuable to talk about, right? Like during that period of time, did you feel like you were the villain a little bit? Like, I hate to use the word selfish, like, but were you seen as selfish or pursuing your own thing? And like, yeah, what did that look like? Because that happened to many people's marriage, including mine as
I
well,
mean,
right? Because we're someone who's really target driven, really ambitious, and then someone who's still trying to figure things out, which, like, in my observation, tends to be the male female, especially in the family business sort of dynamics. Yeah, how did that work?
okay, so there's a little bit of context
Yeah.
in it that Maddie was younger than me. So when we got
Yes.
married, she was 21, I was 28.
Yeah.
So at that point of time, and when I was 28, all of my friends were in their 30s, right? So like
Mm,
I,
mm.
I was not like a 28-year-old hanging out with 28-year-olds. I was
Yeah, yeah,
28-year-old hanging out with 33 to 35 year
yeah.
olds.
You've got an old
Um,
soul.
yeah, so it was just a very so in some ways we laugh about it, but it felt like for her that I was a decade ahead in terms of kind of just stage of life.
Mm,
And she wanted that. Like she's
yeah.
definitely still wanted to be married. She,
Mm,
all of that stuff. But there was difficulty there. So I thought I was doing the right thing
mm,
by giving her space to
mm,
figure out for herself what she wanted. And but the challenge for her was, well, I have gone through my 20s and done lots of travel and done lots of, pursued lots of different opportunities. And so in many ways, I kind of knew who I was, what I wanted, what I was trying to pursue, what the kind of
mm.
vision for our life. But I wanted Maddie to figure that out for herself. And
Yeah.
so I think with the right intentions, I tried to create a space for Maddie to figure that out for herself. And so
Yes.
because of that, it kind of made that challenge worse
Mm.
in a way because it was
Yeah.
reinforcing the individualistic idea of you pursue what you want to pursue, you figure out
Mm,
who you are
mm,
separate from me,
mm.
and I'm going to pursue who I feel I need to
Very
be
interesting.
separate
Yeah.
from you, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it almost reinforced this individualistic
Yeah.
perspective, marriage,
Yeah.
and family.
Yeah. It's almost
The
like,
idea was right, but
yeah, absolutely. It's almost like in the journey of finding out your purpose or who you are and whatnot, you're sort of on your own. And
yeah,
that's how we've been shaped culturally speaking, right?
yeah.
Because you're unique, you've got your own journey, yada yada yada. Um, yeah, okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah, so we were doing that separately, and so
Mm,
that caused I think it caused friction because I think when it came down to it, Maddie's always been a very family driven, marriage, kids,
mm.
that's
Togetherness.
really
Yeah,
those are the things that are the most
yeah.
important to her.
Mm,
And I'm saying to her, let's wait on that while you figure out who you are. And I think for
mm.
her, she was like, well, that is who I am.
Yeah,
But culturally, we're told, hey, no, you got to find out who you are for
yeah,
yourself first before
yeah, yeah.
engage
That's right.
and bring that together into marriage.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, and there's some truth to it. Like there's an element of truth to it. Like I
yeah,
don't think it's completely wrong, but I do think I was reinforcing a cultural norm that I don't know if is correct now.
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
if
Yeah.
it was two 19-year-olds that got
That's
married,
right. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Back in the days,
they would have
people
to.
got married when they were 15, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. They would have to work that stuff out together,
Mm.
and grow together. Whereas
Yeah,
because of
and
our
find
age,
new identity together,
yeah,
as a unit instead of two
yeah.
individuals who are like, matured, and then we go, let's do life together. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Mm,
that was very different for us because of the age gap,
mm,
and then also this idea that I felt was the right thing to do. I still
mm,
think that I don't regret it, but it did create over the time in our marriage a sense of separation
mm,
of
mm, mm.
vision and of team. We weren't a team at that
Yeah,
point in time.
yeah.
And so I think there was friction and frustration for Maddie, who felt like, well, Daniel knows what he wants. He's going after it. Where do I fit? I don't know what I
Mm,
want. And what I want doesn't necessarily align with what Daniel's pursuing right now. So,
mm,
so what
mm.
does that mean? And that was challenging. That was really, really challenging for her.
Yeah. So when did you realize that family is supposed to be a team, or when did this concept of family as a team start baking in your head, and what sort of changed?
Yeah, so I read a book by a guy called Jeremy Pryor. He wrote a
Mm,
book called Family Revision. It's a Christian book, and it was talking a lot about what the ideal for family should look like. And he talks a lot about, multi-generational families. He talks a lot about the Abraham model of family in the Bible. And he was the one that really kind of brought up the idea of family as a team. And that was where, for the first time, where both, because I read it first and was like, oh, this is so good. This is actually such
mm,
a great concept that I think would really help Maddie and I work together better in our marriage. And so
mm,
I asked Maddie to read it. She read it, and it just created a completely different paradigm about how we do family together. And so
mm.
all of a sudden it shifted from two individuals trying to pursue and figure out their identity almost separately, to us
Yeah,
going, okay, well, what does our family look like together? What are we pursuing together? What's our identity together? What are our values? How, and the biggest revelation was understanding our roles in the family as well, and recognizing that it's not necessarily the role forever, but in the season that we're in, what are our roles and responsibilities, and how do we contribute to the family and for our family to win. And so that became a massive revelation. So at the
mm,
time, I was traveling quite a lot for work, and
mm.
that was a source of tension as well,
Yeah,
in our family.
absolutely.
And
I don't
when
know.
we
I don't know how you do it still.
um, so then when we read the family teams kind of concept, it really helped me. It helped me rethink my travel, and it
Mm,
also helped Maddie rethink what she thought about my travel. In terms
mm,
of like how I'm not going just for holidays. How am I going to contribute to the family? But then, what does that travel look like? When do I leave? When do I come back? How do I make sure that my family is supported and secure? And so we've had to make lots of decisions. One of the
mm,
reasons that we moved back to Port Macquarie was so that we could have family support around Maddie and the kids when I am
mm,
traveling. And that was part of that idea of, okay, as a family team, what do our family need? We
mm,
need this because this is important for the business that I'm running, but I can't do that and sacrifice my family, who don't have any
mm.
support. They don't have any security if something was to happen while I was away. So how do
Yeah,
we navigate that together? So as a family team, we started to make decisions very differently based on
yeah.
that revelation.
So obviously I've read the book, I've skimmed through it, not as in detail as you. Pretty much my takeaway on that is the book is sort of advocating or encouraging people to think of your family as a modern day patriarchal
Yeah.
unit, essentially. So I'm interested to unpack that, but question for you would be, let's say you've adopted that concept and trying to shape your business and your family that way, and you're functioning as the modern day patriarch, where I'm just doing a quick search, a patriarchal family is a household structure where the eldest male, which is you, holds primary authority, making major decisions and controlling resources, so on and so forth. Now, this is probably a very generic way of looking at it. What do you think your role is, and how? And I'm more interested to know what Maddie sees her role to be, and how you
Mhm.
guys are sort of functioning in light of this.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something that we're still discovering and working out. So,
Mm.
and because we have to remember as well that the patriarchal identity is not popular in
No, no,
modern day culture, right?
absolutely, yeah.
Because it's seen as and to be fair, has been abused. You know, it's
Yep.
seen as a power position that
Yep.
exploits others for their own
Absolutely. Even
benefit,
even
right?
if I was even when I was reading out the AI description of what a patriarchal family is like, I was already quite, wow, okay. Should we actually put this stuff on a podcast?
Yeah, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly, and
Yeah.
that's the trigger, right? But the thing
Yeah.
that the question we have to ask is the concept or the model wrong, or is
Mm,
the application of the model wrong? And I think the challenge has been that the model has been poorly executed especially for women, which is where I think a lot of the reaction comes from. But I do believe, in our case anyway, like I'm not in the situation that we are. So if we just focus on my family for a minute, you know, I'm not making any judgments on anyone else's decisions
mm,
or choices in
mm,
this moment. But in our family, I have the responsibility to provide for our family.
mm,
The reason we do that is that we feel as a family that the time where our kids are really little, so that kind
mm,
of, you know, from the age of being born through till that kind of school age, it's
mm,
really important that they have a good, stable, and consistent relationship, not just with me, but especially with the mother, right? Like
mm,
that relationship is so important. And so
mm.
we don't want Maddie to be working full time. And by the way, that's not a decision I've made for her. That's what she wants, right?
Yeah.
She wants to be around the kids. And so, what I'm doing with what I do in my business is to provide so that she can be around the kids a lot more and be investing into them in that age where they are learning the most. That's where they learn a lot of their values. It's where they learn a lot of their behaviors, the culture, our family values, and everything. So this is a really crucial part of our family life, I guess, right
Mm,
now while our kids are so young. And
mm,
so in our situation, my role is very much around provision. And for me, I think it's also family values. Like I think that's a really important thing for me to I tend to be the one with our kids anyway that is the stronger, this
yeah.
is
The
what we
alpha.
believe
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
how we
Yeah.
behave. And you
Yeah.
know, and I do feel that that's a role that I hold as a father. Maddie's role is very much more of a nurturing
Yeah.
role and relationship with the kids, and
Mm,
a very much more homemaking role. That's not to say that she only does that. Like she still does, you know, some digital marketing things and some
yeah.
different stuff that she does for others and business and that type of thing as well. But I think she would see her primary role as a mum and a
Mm,
nurturer in
mm,
our family,
yeah.
and homemaking. That's kind of the world that we're in at the moment. So
Yeah.
we probably that's kind of how we see our roles at the moment. So
Yep.
for me, that's the when we're talking about provision and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know making enough to support the vision for
Yeah.
our family. That's really where is on me at the moment.
Yeah. So now this is a challenging question, right? And this is the spirit of our podcast because we want to be asking these hard questions and exploring what
Hmm.
that looks like, right?
Yeah.
Now this is your setup, which is perfectly fine, and and I'm pretty sure you would agree that this is quite a traditional
Hmm.
setup,
Yeah.
where the father or the male, the husband is, you know, the hunter-gatherer out there providing, and then you've got a homemaker nurturing and whatnot. And that works perfectly for your family based on who you are and your journey and whatnot. What would you say in a family situation where the female is a breadwinner for whatever reason, right? The female is a breadwinner. The dad is sort of like you know, semi-stay-home dad, maybe have a couple business or part-time jobs on the side, supporting the income.
Mm.
Because when you say, you know, your role has been the provision or to provide for the family, right? That's sort of financially or materialistically providing, right? In light of family as a team or this whole concept of modern day patriarchal family, what would it look like? And I don't know if both of us have a straight answer for this, right? What would
Mm.
it look like where family situations are slightly different, right?
So yeah,
Yeah.
so I think these things are going to get us in so much trouble. Um, and you're right. I don't think we have a straight answer, right? Because
Mm,
I think there's so many contextual situations that are
that's
different
right.
for every family. So I don't think
Yeah.
it's fair to make blanket statements.
Yeah.
However, what I would be saying is, what is it that the family wants and needs?
Mm,
So if a mother is the main breadwinner, but she wants to be at home more with the kids,
Mm.
then my answer is going to be different to
That's right.
a different scenario, right?
Yeah.
I do think that men need to step up,
Mm.
and in many ways,
Yeah.
from a responsibility point of view, from a parenting, fathering point of view,
Yeah.
from a
Yeah.
provision in terms of income generation point of view, from being creative with
Mm.
finances point of view. I do think as men we need to step up, and I feel like our
Now, you make
culture,
this statement 30 years ago would have been perfectly fine, right?
yeah.
In 2025, some people will be like commenting below saying, "What? Who do you think you are?" And yeah,
Well, I think my opinion, or the thing that I have, right, and this, I know this can potentially get me in trouble, but I feel that the standards for men has been lowered over the
mm.
last 30,
Yeah, I
40, 50 years,
wholeheartedly agree. Yeah.
and I don't know why we've lowered them. Now,
Mm.
if we go back in time, there were a lot of men not living up to those standards, and that
Yeah.
was a problem.
Yep.
But instead of raising the standards for men, it feels like we've lowered the standards for men and raised the
Mm.
standards for women.
Mm.
And now women are feeling, guilt, frustration, um,
Yep.
mum guilt, all of that kind of
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
Um, and yet men are the ones that have benefited from
Mm.
from this shift in culture. There aren't
Mm.
as high expectations on them. And so that's not to say that I don't think men, I think men need more support. I think, there has been a fatherless generation that has
Yeah.
impacted that. I
Yeah.
think there has been some toxic voices that have kind of spoken into that world as well.
Mm.
I don't
Mm.
think media has done any help, when you're looking at the fact of every TV show over the last
Oh
20
yeah,
years,
man.
every father figure is an idiot, doesn't know what he's
Yep.
doing. The
And
kids seem to
and
know better.
every rich person is evil.
And every rich person is evil, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like the standards for men have dropped, and so I would think that the standards need
Mm.
to be raised again.
Mm. Mm.
And so to go back to your question of a mum being the breadwinner, that's
Mm.
fine
Mm.
if that's what you want.
Mm. Mm.
I think that in many cases that I have met, they are the breadwinner, but they feel like they can't step
Yeah,
back and spend more time with their
they're
kids
forced into that
because they're the
situation.
breadwinner. And that's
Yeah.
a problem. That
Yeah.
is a problem because I'm like, well, that relationship between a child and a mum, especially in those early years, in my opinion, is so important that
Mm.
we should be thinking creatively about how we can, manage our finances in a way to support that season and that relationship. And we have to
Mm.
remember is that this is not a lifetime scenario. We're talking
Mm.
about a period of family life,
Yeah.
usually 5 to 10 years, where
Mm.
the kids are going through that period of time. It's
Mm.
not a forever thing. So all that to say, no clear answers. I do think
Yeah.
men should step up more and fight and be creative
Yeah.
and take more responsibility in the family and in the home and and providing for the family.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're right. There are contexts that everyone has to take into account
That's
that
right.
feed into that.
Yeah. Now, one final question for this concept, family as a team, obviously is largely inspired by the family revision book. Now, it's been a while since I've skimmed through the book, but I think one of the concepts that stuck with me was this concept of again, is a patriarchal sort of living setup or living situation where the ideal is not the absolute ideal, but one of the ideal scenarios where you go out there, buy a farm, build a large estate in order to house multi-generational family, right? So again, in my context, I grew up in Asia. I'm a hybrid. Culturally speaking, I'm a bit of a hybrid, so I'm fully fluent in the Asian culture, and I'm also fully fluent in the Australian or the Western culture. So the concept of living with my grandparents or living with my parents, or multi-generational under the same roof is absolutely not foreign to me. Having lived through that situation, is this an ideal for me personally? Maybe, maybe not, depending on the season of life. But I know for most Australians or most for sort of Western people, it is such a foreign idea. It's becoming less foreign now because of the cost of living. So, a lot of people do find themselves living, in their parents for an extended period of time, and they have kids and whatnot. Um, yeah, what's your take on this, right? Based on what the book says, based on your particular scenario, and how do you think the ideal should be?
So I think that we have to remember that this is the way that multi-generational families are pretty much the way that most families have been living up
Yep.
until
Yep.
150 years ago, right?
That's
Like
right. It has
it's
been an ancient practice for many,
yeah,
many
like
years, right? Yeah.
it's not abnormal at all.
Mm,
What's also interesting though is that up until 150 years ago, or even 100 years ago, most families couldn't afford to live outside of a
that's right.
multi-generational family. And
Yeah.
what's interesting is it feels like in some countries in the Western world that it's becoming unaffordable to not do this, have a
That's right.
multi-generational family as well now. So
That's
so
right.
I feel like economics plays a big part of, and just the practicality of
Mm,
multi-generational families. And
mm,
so I think what I worry about is the disintegration of the family values,
mm,
where we're now going, oh, we need to go back to multi-generational families supporting each other
mm.
from an economic perspective. But
Yeah.
because we've broken down family values so much, it's so
Yeah.
hard for families to be aligned again and build relationships. We haven't worked out how to reconcile with our parents. We haven't figured out how to forgive and deal with issues and move on, because we didn't have to. We could just move to
Mm,
the other side of the country and live our
mm,
life, and it'll be okay. So
mm,
I look at the practice of multi-generational families as this is the way things have been for a very long time. It's only been in the
mm,
last 150 years that that's shifted. However, it does feel like for many families, they're having to move back to that kind of practice in order to
mm.
support with the cost of living, cost of
Yeah.
housing, and all of that kind of stuff. I,
Yeah.
I don't think that means that every family should go back to commune living,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
necessarily. But
Mm,
what I do think it means is families need to figure out how to build resources and
mm,
family relationships
mm.
together again.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And I think that bringing family back together and building together, it's that age-old saying of we can go further together than we
Mm,
can alone.
mm.
And what better people to go do that with than your family, you know?
Yeah.
So I do think that it's a ancient practice, and it is coming back and probably needs to come back too.
Well, and this is where the tension is, right? Like I still remember on my wedding day, which was probably 13, 14 years ago now. On my wedding day, my parents are not Christians, and obviously we are first generation Christians, so we did everything the Christian way. We had a Christian wedding, and then the Bible reading was a man should leave his father and mother and join with his wife, and the two are united into one, right? I
Okay.
remember my mum was so pissed off um, during my wedding, reading that scripture, and she was like, afterwards, she was like, "What kind of religion is this? Like, like why would a religion encourage, my son to leave me?" And yeah, she was not comfortable with that concept whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
Um, still to this very day, I don't really have a straight answer, like a theologically sound answer to that question. Um, but yeah, that stuff makes me ponder. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sometimes, yeah, it is a challenging thing to understand and process. But I think it's not I think it's a recognition of both it's probably interdependence, right?
Mm,
There's the independence, and then there's dependence, and then
mm,
there's this idea of interdependence, and
yeah.
I think that's really what we need to figure out is what does interdependence look like? It's not that, you do separate from your parents in the sense that as a father and as
Mm.
a dad
As an
and as a,
adult,
as a
I think as an
husband,
adult,
as an
yeah,
adult, yeah, is probably a
yeah,
better way to say it.
yeah.
Things change. You need to now lead yourself. You need to lead
Mm,
your family, and you
mm,
can't rely on your mum and dad to be
mm,
constantly leading. and making all the decisions for you. You need to take
Mm,
some ownership and you need to take some
mm,
responsibility for yourself. But that doesn't mean that you don't have anything to do with your parents anymore.
that's right.
It's just
Yeah.
that the relationship has shifted. The
Yeah.
relationship
Or
has
the
changed.
I think the authority and the leadership, I think to your point, is now shifted to you. You know, you're responsible of you and your family unit, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So you're no longer under the authority or the supervision of your parents. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think
Mm,
so. So I think that's where the family team idea becomes so important.
yeah.
Where you take it, you're going, okay, I'm the captain of this team, and it's also about roles, right? Like
Mm,
for my dad and my mum, they start to play more of a coaching role,
mm,
on the
mm,
team, whereas
mm,
I'm playing the game, I'm the
mm.
captain, I'm making
Yeah.
the calls,
Yeah.
making the
You're on the
decision.
field. Yep.
My
Yep.
wife and my kids are here with me. They're part of the team, and we're going to win. Whatever
Mm,
winning looks like for us, and what we've
mm.
decided for us to what how we've defined
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
We're on the field and we're playing, and we need coaches. We need
Yeah.
our parents to be kind of playing that role in our lives,
Yeah.
cheering us on, encouraging us, and providing guidance.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we're the ones on the field playing the game.
Yep, and you're playing to win. I love it.
Mhm.
Now, for our audience who are watching, it is a bit of a ritual for our podcast that we want to post one question for us to ponder until the next time we get together again. Now, in light of this concept of family as a team, like if you guys want to go out there and pick up this book, Family Revision, we highly recommend it. It is definitely a challenging way to think about how families can be shaped. It is not the way, but it is a way for us to think about how could we possibly do families and do business better, right? But
Mm.
for you, Daniel, what would be the one question that you would like for us to consider for the next week or so?
Yeah, I think going back to that, what I've just said is, what
Mm,
does winning the game look like for your family? Like, what is the united picture of success? Not just for you individually as, whatever role you're playing, but as a
mm,
family.
yeah,
What is success and what does that look like? And I think
yeah,
if you can come together as a team, as a
mm,
husband and wife, and make that
mm,
decision
yeah,
together,
yeah,
if all the decisions you make become so much easier when you're on the same
absolutely. Yeah,
page.
where's the goalpost?
Where are the
Right?
goalposts?
Yeah,
Exactly.
we're at a goalpost, and then once you know where the goalpost, yeah, if there's no goalpost, there's no game, right?
Yeah.
So we need to clarify or identify what that goalpost is. You know? Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, it's been a great episode. So, watching out there, like, subscribe, comment below. But what is the goalpost for your family, and what does winning that game look like? Would be our question for this episode. Until next time, it's been a pleasure. Great talking to you,
Mm.
Daniel.
Yeah. Love chatting, mate. Awesome.